welcome to What's the Next Step with me, Sarah Harper. I'm here each week with a different guest talking about interesting things, relevant topics to do with work, life, everything in between. Please subscribe when you're listening, it makes a huge difference, and please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. If you prefer to watch, I'm on full episodes on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram and What's the Next Step podcast at gmail.com. Today, we are joined by one of my closest friends, Guy Smith. He has had a real struggle with alcoholism for really all of his adult life and has recently been diagnosed with ADHD, which is an incredibly relevant topic to discuss. More and more people are being diagnosed with ADHD of different ages, and it's really interesting to hear Guy's experience and the link with addiction. So I hope you find this interesting. I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
How do you feel about today's conversation?
Yeah, I feel good. Quite excited, bit nervous. Talking about myself doesn't come particularly naturally, but something I'm getting better at.
Yeah, good.
So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, let's see how it goes. Should we get straight into it? Because
Yes.
then the nerves will disappear, I hope. But we'll take it at the pace that you want to go at. So it's fair to say, isn't it, that we have an amazing group of friends who, back in our university days, partied quite hard, if I could summarise it as that. At what point did you know that you had a problem and that you were actually addicted to alcohol?
So I think there's a big difference between kind of knowing and accepting it.
Right.
I knew from an early age that I couldn't handle my drink, and I knew it was getting me into trouble on a consistent basis. I didn't think I was addicted. I thought I could stop, but I didn't want to.
Right, okay.
I specifically remember being 26 and thinking, I'm going to stop when I'm 30 because I'm getting into too much trouble, but I don't want to miss all this fun that's going on.
Right. So what sort of trouble were you getting into?
Well, I always drank to blackout. So classic sort of alcoholic tendency. As soon as I've had that first drink, that's it, I'm not stopping. And even when you've told yourself a million times that right, I'm going to go out today, I'm going to have 2 or 3, but I don't want to get too pissed, don't want a big hangover, got a big day tomorrow, or made a bit of a fool of myself last weekend, I don't want to do that again. You can go in with the best of intentions,
right,
and then all that's totally out the window, literally after the first drink.
Right. First drink or first sip even, do you reckon? Yeah,
quite possibly first sip. Yeah. Once the alcohol's hit your system.
Yeah.
That's it. And I lost control. From that point onwards, I wasn't in control of my drinking at all. I know I needed to stop. I mean within an evening.
Yes.
I know I need to stop and just couldn't. I drank. And then the next thing I know, I'd wake up. And if I was at home, that was kind of fine because I was safe at home. But I was waking up in hospitals or prison cells or, ditches by the side of the road and things like that. From day one of drinking, really. But looking back now, I'm able to see. I mean, to anybody who's not a big drinker, listening to that, they must think, well, how did you not realise you were an alcoholic? You're quite clearly got a problem with alcohol. That I'm putting myself into all those like horrible, really dangerous situations, and yet going back to it time and time again and expecting something different to happen. And it wasn't like those occasions were a rarity. It was a rarity when something like that didn't happen. I mean, I can barely remember a time where I went to the pub for a few pints and said, "Okay, chaps, thanks. That's me done. I'm going to leave you to it."
Yeah.
I mean,
that wasn't really your MO, was it?
No, it wasn't. So I knew I had a problem with drinking. I knew I wasn't a very good drinker. But I didn't consider myself to be an alcoholic. And maybe that's just because I didn't know what an alcoholic was. For me, an alcoholic was the guy on the park bench with a bottle of wine, or the person who's, getting up every morning and going straight at it every day, all day drinker. That's what I classed as an alcoholic.
Yeah, okay.
And those sorts of people are alcoholics, but for me, alcoholism is just anybody who's got anyone who wants to stop drinking who can't,
Yes.
or when as a result of your drinking, you're putting yourself in danger or your life's becoming unmanageable, basically.
So even when you were talking about that, you said 26, which is still, it's quite a long time, I suppose, after we were at Bristol together with quite a lot of our friends.
Yeah.
So it's quite a long time after that. And when would you say, when was rock bottom?
Wow.
What was the turning point?
So interestingly, it's hard. Rock bottom. So some people, right, they hit a rock bottom and then that's it. That's their turning point. I don't think for me. So I've been sober for just over a year, right? And
Well done.
thank you.
Very proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I am too. Although what brought me to AA about 18 months ago or took me to AA about 18 months ago, was that I think I just had enough. I think it's a cliche, but I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And there were just certain things that just made me feel so bad about myself that I think I just had enough. I'd recently been married, so I had a new priority in my life, which I hadn't had before. But I wouldn't describe that turning point as my rock bottom. There were so at some point, maybe 10 years ago, something like that, I had a situation in Dubai where I was stood at the top of a high-rise building and I nearly chucked myself off, and
While you were drunk, presumably.
while I was drunk.
Yeah.
I climbed outside of the balcony with my back to the drop, miles up in the air, leant back and was ready to let go. And for whatever reason, I didn't. And it still haunts me, and it's still something I'm starting to deal with now. Only now that I've become sober, I'm starting to actually sort of process that, which is good, which is really healthy.
What did you do at that point in terms of getting help? I mean, that sounds...
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Why not,
and it
do you
didn't
think?
even stop me drinking.
Right.
That's the really scary thing,
Right.
about alcoholism, is that you can, the evidence is there so clear that that alcohol is ruining everything and it's potentially going to kill you. And I feel one of the, and maybe we'll come on to it later, but one of the things that keeps me going today is how lucky I am just to be alive. But no, it didn't get any help because I don't know, it's just not the sort of thing that we did growing up. Getting help wasn't seen as a mental health wasn't really on the agenda. Probably I was just embarrassed. I was shameful about it. Wanted it to go away. Just carried on drinking to forget about it. The same. I would say the same when my dad died. When my dad died, I didn't get any help. I didn't really grieve about that. It's just I don't know, something to do with the childhood and upbringing, that in sort of public school, don't talk about your emotions, stiff upper lip. My family home wasn't short of love.
Yeah.
Far from it.
Yeah.
There was love everywhere. But we didn't really discuss emotions and how we were feeling. So it just wasn't something that was on the agenda. And as a bunch of friends, we didn't really talk about that sort of thing.
No, we didn't really, did we? It was a bit more, we had a lot of fun, basically. It was
Yes.
all just sort of blocking things out, presumably with just having a lot of fun. Although it wasn't purposeful, but that was how we went about life.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it was brilliant.
Yeah, it was great fun. Great fun. Yeah. I mean, things went wrong, but I always think, although that it's a balancing act between regretting your past and accepting your past, because I do regret things that I've done and that I was an alcoholic for so long, but at the same time I will always remember that I had some amazing times, some amazing people, and great fun.
Yeah.
Great fun for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about AA? Just in terms of how it works, and I would love to know what it is about it that you're finding helpful.
Yeah. So AA is sort of based around a 12-step program of recovery. Your listeners may or may not know anything about that. And in general terms, the idea is that alcoholism is, or any addiction really, probably, from my experience, is it's a disease of the body, in that you've got that physical addiction, and that's so like I said earlier, once that first bit of alcohol hits, that compulsion, your physical compulsion to keep drinking and keep drinking and keep drinking. But it's also a mental a disease of the mind, in that even when you're not drinking, you're thinking about it, and you're planning it, and you want it, and you can't wait, and what I've learned from AA is that probably, and again, just talking about my experience, everyone's different, everyone's got their own story, right? But probably you're fixing by drinking, you're fixing an existing problem, a hole in the soul, or whatever it is, a problem with your mental health. And the idea in AA, they say you come in for your drinking and stay for your thinking. So you come in the first bit's really hard, the first few months of not drinking, whilst you're getting used to not drinking, and that you've still got those physical, urges, and that compulsion is still there. But once you get through that, and once you get past that, AA is it's a fellowship of people who have all experienced the same thing largely. Now, you've got everything in there from, guys and girls who've just come out of prison, to high flying executives, to bin men, to lawyers, to, one of the things I was amazed at was how many ladies there are there. I thought it would just be mostly, men, and it's not. Loads of women, loads of men of all backgrounds,
All ages?
all ages, all ages, all background. I mean, my sponsor is, an elderly man who has been sober for over 30 years, but there's also, people in there who are still 16, 17. So you've got everything in there, right? But everybody's got a different story, but a commonality as well. And it's a leveler.
Yeah.
It's a leveler, and you talk to all sorts of people, and the power of AA is that everybody understands each other, and there's no judgment. So you can say, I'm full of shame because of this, and this, and they go, oh well, we've all done that, and they make light of it, and we laugh about the things that we've done.
Oh, that's
and,
good.
and not because they are necessarily funny things, and often they've had bad implications for the individual and their families, and alcoholics generally have caused themselves and other people close to them a lot of pain. But we learn to accept ourselves, to accept our past. We make amends for everything that we've done, but we start to deal with it. And so AA, it sobers you up to start with, and then the idea is that you get everything out. So they talk about an exhaustive moral inventory, and that you go through your whole past, and you write down everything that you've ever done wrong that you can remember. I was very clear that I wouldn't be able to remember most of it. But write down everything that you've done wrong, and then you talk to someone about it, and you talk to another human being, another alcoholic about it, one-on-one, and you go through in detail, someone who's already been there, done that, gone through it, and you get it all out, and it's so cathartic. And then from there, you move on to making amends with the relevant people who you need to make amends with, and sometimes they will accept your apology and they're just delighted you're recovering. Other times you might have caused them too much pain and they're not willing to accept your apology, but that's fine as well, because you've done your bit to make amends. And then the last bit of it is trying to, I'm massively sort of summarising here, but the last bit is that once you've got all the bad stuff out, you've identified all your sort of what we call defects of character. Have I been selfish? Have I been self-seeking? Have I been, unkind? All those things, and work out what sort of a person you've been during your alcoholism, and then you try and live your life to work on those defects of characters as you go forward. So you do it. you do an inventory on yourself on a regular basis and go, how have I behaved last week? Have I been kind? Have I been generous? Have I been unkind? Have I been selfish? Is there anyone I need to say sorry to for what I did last week, even in sobriety, because I was rude or impatient or, dismissive of my wife or unkind to a friend or whatever it is. And so you're going in to stop the drinking, to look at yourself inside and then try and live a much sort of cleaner life, not just off the booze, but sober in your emotions as well.
Because it's quite ongoing hard work then.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's every day. The thing at AA is we say that, you have to take it a day at a time, and you can never. There are plenty of people who have been in AA for 10 years, and you think they've got it licked, and they, for whatever reason, decide they have got it licked. They pick up a drink, and unfortunately, some of them don't make it back, and because they die. Lots of people die at AA. Lots of people die, because it's such, for some people, it's an impossible task. For others, it's not. And that's probably just luck more than anything else. Not because they're not trying at it, not because they're not working hard at it.
Yes. Is there anything that you worry about that might cause you to pick up a drink?
No, nothing specifically. But that's the point of doing the point. So another thing that we're encouraged to do at AA, and AA is not about doing what you're told. It's about listening to other people's experience, what they do, and following their suggestions.
Right.
And the 12
Learning from each other.
Learning from each other. And one of the steps is about sort of daily meditation, or daily reflection. You don't have to meditate, but the point is that you sit down and you bring yourself and in your mind to a level of serenity, because most people, when they relapse, is probably because of stress or worry or something really good's happened or something really bad's happened, or any of life's challenges, right? And they're usually the things that are enough to push someone over the edge. So the idea of the daily program is to keep you in a balanced, in a level of emotional sobriety, so that you don't feel the need to drink, and then all of that is sort of held together by regularly going to meetings, so that you're constantly reminded of why you're there, and you don't get complacent, and you hear other people's stories and you go, yeah, that was me. God, I remember. It's because it's very easy to go, I've done it now, I feel great, and let your guard down.
Because you have actually stopped drinking a number of times, haven't you?
Yeah.
And exactly that has happened.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And then one thing, you just say, no, I can handle it now. And you've had a drink, and then it's sort of gone back to where it was.
Yeah, exactly. So you can never be.
But now you're fully in AA. I mean, I think previous times you were just trying it on your own, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Whether it was dry Januaries or trying to do 4 months or
losing weight or anything.
Replacing it, drinking with. A lot of people replace it with either nothing, so they just go, I'll just stop drinking, and eventually you'll probably just end up back to it. Or I'll go to the gym a lot, do this a lot and that a lot. And actually, it's usually something in your mind, in your heart, that needs solving and working on an ongoing basis.
So do you feel as though you know what it is in your mind and heart that needs solving?
No, I don't. Looking back, I think that I was, as you're probably well aware, as you are well aware, I was often in trouble as a young man, as a boy, as a child, and I think we're going to go on to talk about ADHD later, aren't we? But I struggled all my life. I struggled with dealing with my emotions, concentrating, focusing. And so as a result of those things, I was hyperactive. As a result of those things, as a child, I was constantly in trouble.
Yes.
Day in, day out, for basically the whole of my childhood. And
you basically kept detention alive, didn't you?
I did keep detention alive, yeah, absolutely. I love detention. I don't know, yeah. So, and I think that, so you've got two things going on there. You've got and I didn't realise it at the time, this is just sort of looking back at it, but you've got the negative effect that has on your self-esteem. If you're every single day on the back foot, apologising, in trouble, you know you're not a bad person, but you start to believe the press. You start to believe the chat that you are an annoying little brat, spoiled.
Needs to pull their socks up.
Yeah, stop messing around.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. So there was that, and then that lack of self-esteem and that constantly being on the back foot carried on into my adulthood because of my drinking.
Yes.
So again,
You almost proved the point a bit
waking
to yourself.
up every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, not knowing what I'd done the night before, probably in trouble, probably done something I regret, probably lost everything, pissed people off. So that went on, and then the other thing that I really struggled with was the emotions. Talking to girls, I always found that really, really hard. Not girls who were friends, but girls who I fancied or might fancy me, or couldn't do it. I was horrified. I would shake, couldn't until I'd had a pint.
Yeah.
And then no problem. So it's in my mind. Well, I can't go and meet anyone until I've had a couple of drinks, and then I'm fine, and then I'm happy, and then I'm chatty, and I'm not nervous anymore. But in about 5 pints after that, you won't get a word out of me anyway, or a word of any substance.
The date is somewhat over.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think there are a few things. I'm early in my journey of sobriety. Touch wood, I've got a long way to go on it.
Yeah.
But I'm learning so much about myself.
So you don't actually talk to a therapist, it sounds like, or is that no? So it's really just learning within the group.
It's group therapy.
Yeah.
Group therapy.
Yeah.
And you have chats with loads of people before the meeting, after the meeting. I go out for coffees with guys from AA. And my sponsors, he's just an amazing, amazing man. I've been really lucky. He's so wise and all-knowing, and he has seen it all before, and he's had a really successful career since he stopped drinking. But he's been 35 years sober, and he goes to his meetings all the time. He still does it.
35 years.
Every single day he does the work. To stay sober, and he's not complacent about it. And you'd think, wouldn't you?
I've definitely got it sorted now.
Yeah,
You think?
Yeah. But that's not always the case.
What can those of us who are lucky enough to be your mates, what can we do to help, and what could we have done better? I suppose thinking of people who might be listening who are friends of, what do you think we could have done?
You know what? There isn't very much. There isn't very much at all. So. Obviously we were in an environment, like you said, where we were always on the piss, we were always going out, we were having great fun. We were so blessed to have such an amazing group of friends.
Totally.
And then as we got a bit older, some peeled off and settled down and were starting to be more sensible, and others didn't. And plenty of people over the years told me I shouldn't be drinking, and they were right. But when you're in it, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to know that. So you lie to yourself. And you're very dishonest about it. And you can't really help an alcoholic until they want to be helped. There's you'll remember that a bunch of our friends did a bit of a what's it called? Intervention on me. That's right. And so as a result of that, I went to AA about 10 years ago, but I wasn't there because I wanted to be. I didn't agree with them. I wasn't ready. I sat it out for a few months. I didn't do any of the work. I didn't speak to anyone. I despised them. I looked down at them. I honestly did. I laughed at them in my head. I thought, this bunch of losers.
Not for me.
Meeting. Yeah. I can sort this out myself. And time again, there are loads of people in AA who come in, drop out, come in, drop out, come in, drop out. And then one time they don't drop out. And it was just their time, and there's not a lot really that anybody. I mean, that's not to say that if you're worried about a friend, you shouldn't speak to them. Absolutely, you should speak to them and check with them and ask them if they're all right, and do all those good friend things. But ultimately,
it's on them.
It's on them,
Yeah.
and they'll do something as long as they know where to turn.
Yes.
When they're ready.
Yes.
And sadly, some people don't become ready, and bad things happen.
Or they don't have people to turn to.
They don't have people to turn to. Yeah.
Well, we're all here for you, as and when you ever.
Well, I've got an amazing group of friends.
Yeah.
I'm so blessed.
Yeah.
I was thinking on the way out, driving up today, I was just thinking how lucky. How lucky.
Yeah,
we are.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Let's talk about ADHD. So, I mean, I've made some notes here because I don't want to miss anything. But you are, and you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again, at risk of embarrassing you. We all do. We see you as a complete ray of sunshine. You're positive, you're fun, you're generous, you're kind, you're sensitive, you're open, you're thoughtful, and you're very, very funny. And I just think you're one of the best people ever in the whole world, 100%.
Very kind.
However,
What?
it's fair to say you're unbelievably forgetful.
Yeah.
And very disorganised.
Yep.
And as a result, somewhat unreliable.
Yes.
And you've only just now been diagnosed with ADHD.
Yes.
I mean, I lost count the number of mobile phones you've lost or number of keys you've left. I mean, I think I've still got a toothbrush of yours upstairs from the last time you stayed.
Yeah.
So, and now finally you've been diagnosed and you are now on medication. What does that, well, first of all, what did it feel like having ADHD? What does it feel like?
It's when I got diagnosed, the doctor said this is probably the easiest diagnosis I've ever met.
Right. Did he?
Yeah. And he said, I'm just really sad that you've had to wait till you were 45 or whatever. But again, it all ties back to the alcohol, because if I wasn't drinking all those years, I'd probably have done something about it. When I got sober, I started to care about myself.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
you know, stop drinking, and then that leads to all sorts of
Yes.
what do I need to do to catch up a bit?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a little bit behind in the self-care bit. And so you start to have an interest in health and brain health and all those things. And then as soon as I started reading into it, I was just like, oh, blimey. I mean, it was a tick in every single possible marker for ADHD. I had it. And it just made so much sense.
I mean, to all of us, it made complete sense as well.
Well,
100%.
one of my best friends, who's a common friend to us, Nick.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like, well, of course you've got it.
Yeah, I think he
assumed.
he diagnosed it years
I
ago.
think he assumed I already knew.
But you told me two things recently, because I mean, I'm aware of it mostly because friends' children have it, because it's becoming so much better diagnosed, frankly, amongst the younger population, while the adults sort of catch up, to your point. So I don't really know what it feels like, but you told me two things recently, which just completely opened my eyes and slightly blew my mind, if I'm honest. The first was about the time when you had an appointment with your psychiatrist at 8:15 in the morning. You'd a telephone call. You'd thought about it the night before. I think you maybe made a couple of notes of things to discuss with him. You took the dog for a walk the next morning, completely forgot about the meeting, despite the fact it had been on your mind for a good 24 hours.
Yeah.
And he then called you at 25 past and you were like, oh, sorry, I completely forgot.
Yeah.
And then the second thing you told me was that you took a picture and sent it to me of you being inside the supermarket and you'd left your car parked with the front door wide open, the door of the car wide open.
Yeah, I did that again this morning. At
Did you?
At the lake, yeah. So I got out, put the key, locked the car. Got out, got changed to do my swimming. I always put the key on the tyre.
Right.
I don't lock the door, but because it's a safe place.
Let's not tell anyone where you go swimming in case they want to look on that tyre.
But put the key on the tyre for security purposes, and then when I came back, the two doors were wide open.
I mean, it's just extraordinary, isn't it?
And it's a daily event. These are daily things for me. That meeting thing, you know, I'll have an important meeting at work that I will be preparing for in the morning, and then something will pop up on my screen, and and all of a sudden I'm 20 minutes late for the meeting because I've been replying to an unimportant email that's come in. I just don't seem to have the. There's just something. So ADHD, and I'm still very sort of uninformed from a scientific perspective, from a neuroscientific perspective in terms of ADHD. But basically, there is a big correlation between people with ADHD and people who have an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex.
Right.
So your prefrontal cortex is the bit of your brain that controls logic, emotions, reactions, all those sorts of things. So that kind of, focus, all those. So that, fits in. And then often people with ADHD struggle with stress, which I do. And
there's a link with addiction.
Massive link with addiction. And when you go into stress mode, what happens in your body when you go into stress mode is that your adrenal glands pump in a load of cortisol. Cortisol goes through into your brain and says to your brain, we're stressed. And the brain takes certain actions, sort of, ancient human actions to keep you alive. One of which is to divert your blood flow away from your prefrontal cortex into the other bits of your brain that just keep you alive.
Right.
So you lose, I mean, makes sense, right? When you're stressed, your logic goes, your decision making
Yes.
goes, all those sorts of things, right? So
Just
it's a bit
focused
of a
on
double
keeping you-
whammy if you've got certain types of ADHD. The memory bit, I haven't got to the bottom
Right.
of whether that is directly related to ADHD, but it's something that massively holds me back. But I'm also very aware of the amount of alcohol I've drunk over the years. I'm aware of the amount of drugs I've done over the years. And I'm guessing, well, I'm not guessing, those things either aren't good for your memory and probably not for your long-term memory. So it's hard to know,
Yeah.
what causes what, right? But, and does correlation equals causation? I don't know. But I was the same at school.
Yes.
I lost my jumper every day. I'd lose everything all the time, every day. You might see in my mouth, I've got one tooth that's going back. I did have that sorted. I got given a brace. You remember those braces?
Yes.
You can
The
put
plate
in,
thing.
pull out. I lost them, every time after about a week. They were 300 quid a pop. So after about 4 goes, mum and dad said, that's your lot.
Yeah.
and I've lost everything always forever.
Yes.
So I've always had it.
Yes.
I don't know whether that's specifically ADHD,
Yes.
but it sounds like it.
But that takes me back to your level of positivity, and you don't seem to. I mean, what you've described, both the alcoholism and the ADHD. One takeaway could be that life has been quite tricky for you,
Yeah.
and with quite significant hurdles along the way.
Yeah.
But nothing seems to get you down.
Yeah. It does. Things do get me down. And I'm good at hiding it. I'm not very good at talking about it and reaching out to people. If people ask me, I'll talk about it, but I'm nervous as hell calling up someone and saying, can I have a chat about something? Or whatever. But that said, I do genuinely, I think naturally within me and proactively and intentionally, maybe that's a better word, intentionally, try to be positive about life. I just don't, I'm a firm believer, even more so in the last year, that happiness is a choice.
Yes.
Now, I
agree.
say that, I'm conscious I say that from a massive position of luck and fortune and we happen to live in a country where we have and in circumstances where we're incredibly lucky and incredibly privileged. We're not in Gaza, we're not in Ukraine,
Yes.
we're not in some really tricky parts of the world, and even within England, and within the Western world, we're privileged again on top of that because we live relatively comfortable lifestyles and we have roofs above our heads and we turn the heating on and etc. etc. So I sometimes I cringe at myself when I say you can choose to be happy, but we're all in the situation that we're in. We all have our own issues, whether they're health, financial, relationship, work, whatever they are, right? And I kind of feel that there's no point in. No, that's the wrong way to say it. You've got a choice. Everybody's got a choice. You can either get really cross and upset and worried about stuff, or you can say to yourself, well, actually, is getting cross, upset, and worried about this going to help? If your mum's just been diagnosed with a terrible illness, of course you're going to be upset about that and you're going to be sad about that. But if you're upset about that and sad about that every single day, you're not helping her and you're not helping yourself. And sort of jumping back into AA a bit, one of the things about AA is finding some sort of spirituality as well. And that's helped me massively in trying to sort of understand our place in the universe. And when you really, we're so lucky to be alive. We are unbelievably lucky just to exist. So I listened to someone saying the other day, and he was saying there's like a few different scientific equations that have to be exactly precisely right for the university to exist, sorry, for the universe to exist, right? And the chances of those things being right are millions and millions and millions of times worse or more unlikely than the chances of you or I going out and finding the specific grain of sand that we're looking for in the entire world, right? So we're lucky from that. And then when you layer on top of that the chances of Earth having life on it, and then humans existing because the dinosaurs got wiped out by it, and then I don't know how did your parents meet?
Bristol University.
Yeah, what happens if your dad had gone to Cambridge
Yeah,
University?
then there'd be no me.
There'd
I
be
mean,
no
sad
you.
times.
Yeah, exactly.
Sad
We wouldn't
times.
be having this conversation. But that's how fragile. That's how
Yeah.
like, and their parents and their parents and their parents. And if one of those had gone a different direction, you wouldn't be alive. Or you know, been late and missed a date. It could have. It's the whole Gwyneth Paltrow sliding door
Yeah,
thing, isn't it?
yeah.
Right? And I just try to remember how like we are so lucky that, and we're here for such a small period of time. We don't get very long on this earth, and we don't know how long it's going to be. So, you know, I just try to remember that and try and be grateful. And when I think like that, my problems tend to dissipate quite a lot.
I mean, it's amazing listening to you though, because I mean, I don't want to labour the point, but I suppose a lot of people would say that they struggle to have the outlook that you seem to have, and they haven't had the challenges that you've had. So, I mean, well done you, basically, and long may it continue.
That's just it's mental health, isn't it? Right? You are your thoughts. And a lot of people, and I have done a lot in my life until very recently, and including, and I still do, and it's always work in progress. But you are your thoughts, and if you can find a way to detach yourself from your thoughts and almost kind of be above yourself and look down and you know, for me, my morning routine is huge. My outlook on life is grounded by having a regular morning routine where I remind myself how lucky I am and remind myself of all the amazing things, like you, like my other friends, like my family, like my wife, that she's pregnant. Remind myself of how lucky I am, despite all the other shit that's going on in the background. Like, you know, I'm not happy about this, or I've fallen out with this person, or we're broke, or whatever it is.
Yes.
But always the gratitude's outweigh.
I mean, glass half full.
Yeah.
Is basically the way that you have always, I think, well, certainly that's how you come across.
Yeah.
It's just such a joy to be around.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always, by the way, it's not always the best thing to be, because, I mean, it's a great thing to be, but you've still got to knuckle down and deal with your problems. And, you know, and for years I've been guilty, and still am, every day, to procrastination and sticking my head in the sand and not dealing with my problems. Just because you have a glass half full attitude and you can put things in perspective, you've still got to.
Yes.
Still got to deal with your problems, and
got to be a grown up and kind of work.
Which I hate. But yeah, life's easier, I think, if you can learn to be grateful and try and see the positive in bad situations.
Yes, I totally get that. You mentioned that you are your wife's pregnant, Hannah's pregnant.
Yes.
So I know that's what's coming up for you, but also I know that you're really interested, and you started to kind of talk. I think that's where some of what you're talking about is this new area of interest that you have outside of your day job.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that.
Okay, so I'm doing a course called Mind Body Practitioner.
Right.
So technically it's called a holistic life coach and mind and body practitioner. Basically, I've always been fascinated in psychology, and more so recently. Obviously, I've had my own mental health challenges over the years, so I'm quite interested in mental health. I'm an avid listener of podcasts of people talking about that subject matter, and it just really engages with me. And I love the. It's about coaching, but from a scientific standpoint. So it's quite heavy on neurology.
Yes.
Now, I haven't got to that bit yet, so it's in 3 stages. I've done the I've done the coaching bit, how to be a coach, what you do to be a coach. Da, da, da. The next bit is all about the neurology. So that's the bit where I'm really going to have to concentrate and learn and work out ways to remember things.
Right.
Because I can't remember things. So I can remember some stuff, but and yeah, I just love it. I'm engaged with it, and by going to AA, I've realised the value of helping people. So we all help each other at AA. We're like a community, like a fraternity or whatever, where you just want to help everyone else because you know what they're going through, and nothing is ever too much for people within limits and boundaries, obviously, but more or less nothing's ever too much for people. And I get such a buzz out of helping people at AA, and I know what their help to me has meant to me. Helping other people is an amazing thing to do, but it's also very self-fulfilling, right? You feel good, and
Two-way.
Yeah, it is two-way, absolutely. And the whole point that at AA, you have sponsors, and I'm forever saying thank you to my sponsor. Thank you, ladling him with praise. You've changed my life, blah blah blah. And he's always saying, you've changed mine. Just by us having these conversations, you remind me and keep me safer. And so anyway, the coaching bit is an extension of that. I want to sort of do this around my job and try and help other people, not necessarily with alcoholism, but with mental health issues, and how looking after their body and their spirit will help their mind.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, from your own experiences, all the emerging information and science about gut health, for example,
Yes.
and how your gut health has a direct impact on your mental health, which 10 years ago, 15 years ago wasn't understood at all.
No.
If you had mental health problems, maybe you go for a run.
Yes. Yeah, it was much more connected to physical exercise,
Yeah.
wasn't it, rather than anything that we were eating or
exactly.
consuming.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
agree.
So it's looking at everybody's life as a package. I cringe at the thought of a life coach when you look at the mess that my life's been. So I'm going to try and think of a different name for it.
Well, actually, though, isn't that part of what completely deepens your empathy?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
The fact that you've actually had some really challenging
Yes.
things happen in
Yeah,
life
yeah,
makes you able to connect with other people who've
Yeah,
had
100%.
difficulties.
Yeah,
I think you'd be a fabulous person to talk to
yeah.
about either actual mental health concerns or from a life coach perspective.
Yeah.
I think you'd be absolutely brilliant.
Well, there's a lot to learn, and I'm very, very
Yeah.
cautious that
Yeah.
it's a huge responsibility.
Yes.
So I'm doing it in the evenings and some weekends, and I'm just going to take my time with it and learn as much as I
Yeah.
can before
Before you
possibly doing that at weekends or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, just bringing it to a close, I asked you, when you said yes, what had led you to say yes to having this conversation? Because I think it's quite a big deal for somebody to come on and talk about their history, and I think it's incredibly brave. And I think you said that actually it's something you're really encouraged to do at AA.
Yeah. Well,
Perhaps you could just say
yes.
why that's important.
Well, so yeah, at AA, different meetings have different formats, but the main format is that one person sits at the front and shares their story, their experience of alcoholism, the strength that they have gained since then, and their hope for the future. Again, experience, strength, and hope, right? And it's especially in the early times at AA, it's such a frightening prospect.
Yeah.
Such a frightening prospect. If you've been in alcoholism for that long period of time, you're not used to being honest with yourself, let alone other people, and especially not about what you've done and what you've been up to and
What you feel bad about.
what you feel bad about,
Yeah.
your emotions and all
Yeah.
that. And then sitting up in front of doing that in front of a bunch of strangers, no thanks.
Yes.
And you're not expected to at the start. No one would want you to because it might put you off.
Fair enough.
So when you're ready, and people can tell when you're ready, you get asked. But your sponsor will say, once you start getting asked, you should always try and say yes if you can. Not just because you'll be helping someone else. There might be a newcomer in that room that day, and yours is the first thing they hear, and they might connect with you. And because of what you've said, they might stick around in AA. But also because it's very good for you, and the more you talk and get things out, the better you'll feel and the more you can process things and move on. So when you text me, my instant reaction was no chance. Absolutely not. And then but I very quickly thought, actually, you know what? Sod it.
Has it been okay?
It's been really nice.
What would you say to people if they're listening to this and they haven't quite got to the point yet of getting to AA or finally admitting it to themselves? What would you say to people?
I would just say that when I was expecting AA, like I said earlier, to be a room full of smelly drunks. If you're and it's not, they're amazing, funny, light-hearted, lots of gallow humour, and if you want to stop drinking and can't, you've got nothing to lose. Come along, find a meeting, get online, find a meeting, just go and sit and listen. Just go and sit and listen and keep coming back, and eventually it'll sink in. And the other thing I would say is, we always say to newcomers is always look out for the similarities, not the differences. Because when I went, like I said earlier, for the first time, I was just judging people. I don't do that. I wouldn't do that. But actually, if you listen up, you'll find something in everything anyone else shares that you can relate to. My life today, although nothing material around me has changed from 12 months ago, is immeasurably different to when I was drinking. Just little things like never waking up with any concern about what you've done the day before. I mean, the worst thing I might think is, oh God, how many bags of minstrels today? but nothing serious, right? Just it's an unbelievable place. I couldn't speak highly enough of it.
Yeah, okay, that's great advice. Thank you. Thank you for being so thoughtful.
Thank you for talking to me. Enjoyed it.
See you later.
Bye.
So that is the lovely, thoughtful and incredibly brave Guy. He called me about 20 minutes after he left to say how helpful and thought-provoking he'd found the conversation. And it was an instant reminder to me that healing does really begin and indeed continue when people feel heard. And it's really made me think about whether or not I am asking my friends, my colleagues, my family members, particularly male, how they are and whether or not I'm really listening and giving them that ear. Suicide was the biggest cause of death for men under 50 in the UK last year. And so it's really made me consider how I can try and be there for all of the men folk in my life. If you found this personally relevant or just generally interesting, I highly recommend you read Gabor Mate's In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. Gabor is a well-known psychologist. He lectures and gives talks globally on many different topics, but addiction is one of his specialisms. And he also has ADHD and has researched and written quite a lot about ADHD, which he touches on in this book, as well as addiction, and the link between the two. And he has quite an interesting perspective on the origins of ADHD and why we are seeing more of it today. So it's a really interesting read. It's pretty heavy going, but I'm sure you'll get something out of it. Please let me know what you think, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks very much for listening, and take care.